First off, thanks a lot, Nina, for taking the time to actually do this fireside chat interview with us. I'm really excited to have you on board. For those who don't know me, I'm Alessio. I'm the founder and CEO of Forward Fooding. We run the world's first collaborative platform for the food and beverage industry. And as we believe that basically collaborations between corporates and startups can really make a difference in solving some of the biggest challenges that are affecting our food system. So without further ado, let me introduce to Nina, who's the CEO of byFlow. byFlow was awarded last year as one of the winners of the FoodTech 500, which is kind of our endeavor to showcase all the innovations that are happening across the agri-food tech ecosystem from entrepreneurs. Nina, the first question for you would be, I know you're on a mission to change the way we prepare and experience food, but for those who don't know you, can you briefly introduce yourself and byFlow and give us a bit of a genesis of how you co-funded the business, along with your brother and father, actually, which makes it even more intriguing.
Family business, indeed. Thank you so much for letting me join this cool interview. So I'm really excited about it. Well, my name indeed is Nina Hoff, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of byFlow, a company specialized in developing 3D printing technology for the food industry. Maybe a few of you have already heard about it, but still quite new as an application in the 3D printing space. Of course, we know everything about plastic printing and metal printing, also already in the industries, for example, for building rockets or cars, but now there's also technology for food. And yeah, we are indeed on a mission to change the way people experience and prepare food. Contributing in the end to a more sustainable and healthy world. And how we do that is we have a product on the market called the Focus 3D Food Printer that allows people in the food industry to create completely new food products or to have experience for their customers. I will tell a bit more about that later. How did we found it? Well, actually, it was an accident. As most of the startups sometimes start. My brother Floris, he was studying industrial design and he had to do an internship. So he did that in our dad's company, Fritz's company, which was a fab lab. It's actually a maker space where you can use all kinds of equipment. And his internship was about making an existing product better. And 3D printing back then, I'm talking about 6 years ago, was quite technical. There were a lot of cables involved and 3D printers broke a lot. And so Floris thought, as smart as he was, that he could do that better and actually make a product that wouldn't break anymore. And during his studies, he found out that within 3D printers, what breaks is mainly the print head, so where the material is being extruded. So he developed a system where you can swap print heads magnetically. And my father was in the fab lab collaborating with all kinds of industries, the medical industry, but also the food industry. And there were more and more questions coming from also food industry, like, hey, we can use plastic printing, but why isn't there a system that we can start to do 3D food printing? So Floris developed a print head that could extrude food. And that's actually how it started. It was still a hobby, it was still internship, it was still very small, but going through a lot of fairs about 3D printing, already quickly they found out that there was a lot of interest in the product that he developed during his internship. And to draw attention on those fairs, my father came up with the idea to start a 3D pop-up restaurant where actually everything was printed. So your chair from plastic, your plate from ceramics, and then the food. As a family, we do not have any experience with food, so my father just called a lot of Michelin star chefs in the city that they were in the fair. So for example, in Berlin, we did it with Tim Rauwe, or in Spain, we did it with Joel Castagne, and we just called them like, hey, we have something cool, but we need some food experience people, so can you please join? And that's actually how our pop-up restaurant was born, but also how we really saw that there was interest from the food industry to develop further technology, 3D printing technology for food. So in 2015, when my brother called me and he said like, okay, Nina, now I get so much interest for my 3D printer. Could you please help me because I need more business experience. I just want to work on the technology. That was the moment when we started together byFlow. I can't hear you, Alessio. Maybe you're mute, I think.
You're right. You're right. Sorry, I always mute myself because I don't want to interrupt the speaker. But I was just saying that it sounds like this is like 6 years worth of entrepreneurial experience condensed into a couple of minutes. And
Yes.
it's so good to hear it also that it kind of occurred very naturally, right? As you had more business experience than he had, but he had that technical background that would have never allowed you to probably put, the first prototypes together. And out of interest, I'm not sure whether you were part of that journey, but how was the first reaction actually from chefs when you actually just rang them up saying, we have something cool to show you. We have no idea how to kind of blend, food into this, but we think that there is a fit for it.
Yes, it was really mixed. Some chefs, of course, which are really into doing all stuff by hands and craftsmanship. They were like, no, I'm never going to use technology inside my kitchen. I use a blender, but that's more than enough. But especially from the young chefs, so let's say in their 20s or 30s or early 40s, they were really looking and still are really looking for innovative kitchen tools, because they're really bound now with molds and stuff, for example, and they don't have any tool to bring their creativity, which they have like in a blink of a moment, to life. And that's what 3D food printing helps with. So mainly from the young chefs, and especially when we made those calls with in a really early stage with the Michelin star chefs, they were like, this is amazing, and it gives us so much opportunities and so many possibilities. And we can finally make that food, which is really important, also appealing. A lot of young chefs and especially high-end chefs are really working on art on the plates. And they make a lot of sketches in the beginning, like going from an idea to an actual dish can take sometimes 6 months or even a year or years. So with this printer now, they really have a tool to just start to experiment with, but also to really bring that experience that they have in the back of their minds, so not only in taste, but also in looks, to the actual plate of the customer. So mainly young chefs are super excited about this. Yeah.
That's awesome, and I'm sure that it will contaminate also the old schoolers, right? In also trying out some of these new tools. Fantastic. Thanks, Nina, for sharing this. And can you tell us actually a bit more about the focus? When did you first launch it, and what was the biggest challenge in developing the product? Also, I guess, in terms of product market fit and really identifying, how that product could solve an issue or create value, for your end users.
Yes, exactly. Well, and you're tackling indeed the most important challenge that we've had. So we launched the printer in 2016 in a really small batch to indeed find the right product market fit. But we were able to really start selling into, let's say, the food industry in 2018, so a year and a half later. Because another challenge was when you make one printer, it's not that hard. And it doesn't matter if it takes you 8 hours or 20 hours to make one product. But if you need to start scaling up and you need to make maybe 100 a week or 100 a day, then how do you do that? So that was one of the challenges that we had from an engineering standpoint. How do you make a product in such a way that you can make more in a shorter amount of time? So we spent quite a lot of engineering work in finding a way how we could scale up assembly and production of the product. And the other challenge, which was actually more my challenge because my brother was more into the technical side, was really indeed to find the right product market fits. Like who wants to buy this? It's an expensive machine. It's 4,000 euros. So it's not something that you just simply invest. You really have to have a use case for it, and also a model for return on investment, like how will you earn this back? So my job was to interview almost everyone in the whole food chain, from food multinationals to retail organizations to bakeries, catering companies, restaurants, well, name it, to go with the machine. And luckily it's a portable machine, so it fits inside of a suitcase, so I could just take it by hand on my bicycle and went everywhere to just show it and find out why people would want to use such a tool and what they were looking for. And that is how we found out that and that's also in our mission, that what our target group, which is mainly then chefs, either from a restaurant or a pastry chef or a hotel chef or whatever, are really looking for that experience for their customers. It has to be fun. It has to be exciting when you go out for dinner and you pay quite a lot of money for a nice meal. And that is really where the focus printer came in hand. But that took us also some time, because that also comes with finding the right recipes. What can be printed? I mean, can you print a tomato, or can you print a carrot, or can you print sweets like cookie dough and stuff like that? So we actually had to also hire people inside of our company that had not only experience in developing technology, but also had experience in food. And that's also, and you were mentioning it already in the beginning, which is, I believe, important for forward fooding. What you see as an important mission is that also for us, we needed to see that we needed to collaborate actually with the industry, food industry, in order to make our technology better and to find that right product market fit. So we immediately collaborated with, for example, Verstegen, which is a big herbs and sauces company, to learn more about food. We've collaborated with chocolate manufacturers. We've collaborated with almost everyone in the industry, also a big retail company here, to just learn more and tackle those challenges. And lastly, and then you can ask your new question, but what's also an important challenge for us is regulation. There is no regulation yet for 3D food printing. So what do you need to follow? I remember the first time that we wanted to ship our printer to an Australian restaurant, which was actually used for MasterChef Australia. And then the customs called us from the airport, and they were like, what is this? I mean, how can we, what should we declare it, let's say? And we were like, yeah, it's a 3D food printer. And they were like, yeah, but we don't have a label for that. And then we were like, okay, but then just make it, I don't know, what kind of choice do we have? And they were like, yeah, do you want it to be a microwave or a blender, or is it an oven, or is it a 3D printer? And we were like, yeah, it's a combination of everything. So regulation also, and still is today, a big issue. That is always too slow when it comes behind innovation, unfortunately.
I can imagine. Yeah, I know that there are quite a lot of other sectors that are kind of currently affected by, the lack of regulation, or in some cases, it's overregulated. So I guess it's a difficult, place to be anyway. But it's probably better to be in an unregulated or yet to be regulated space than an overregulated one. But I can imagine that there are no direct application effectively to it, and especially for those who don't work in the industry, it might even sound like crazy. And I can just picture the face of the officer at the airport, dealing with trying to understand what was even inside, I guess, the box, and being puzzled about how to label it. Exactly. Fantastic. Thanks, Nina, for sharing also these funny facts. And I guess it's part of the journey you've gone through. So I'm glad to hear that also, there were some bumps, in the road, but you were able to overcome all of those by almost explaining also, how you actually went about developing the product in the first place. Because I guess that can help people, to wrap their head around how it can actually be used. And building on this, what are the main applications of your product, and who are your clients? Meaning, in all your development, customer development journey, who were the first customers, I guess, who came on board, and what are the main applications as of now of the product?
Yes. So our customer group, it's quite broad. Our biggest customer group at the moment is education and research institutes, either from food companies or just food research institutes in general. So there's a lot of, also because the technology is still quite new, there's a lot of research being done actually with our Focus 3D food printer and the online platform that we supply with it. So the biggest target group indeed currently is universities. So think about food innovation studies that want to learn more on how this technology will impact the future food industry. but also R&D companies that are looking for a tool, just as they do actually with plastic printing, so to make prototypes of their food products, which they can do now in a few minutes instead of making a mold and trying to recreate the mold and stuff like that. So that's our biggest target audience. But quickly after that already comes, of course, the high-end restaurants I was mentioning before, chefs, hotels, catering companies that are really looking into entertainment and how to make it more fun for their customers and how to win over competition. And of course, yeah, the bakeries and the chocolatiers are also looking for it. Main application is experience to the plate. So making beautiful art, which you cannot do by hand or mold, which the 3D printer can do, create beautiful foods. So that's for now still the main application. But as I was saying, research is being done because there are so many future applications, and those future applications lie in, for example, food waste. How can we use a 3D food printer to prevent food waste? Or is there a way that we can reuse, let's say reuse food? Think about all the products that are being thrown away now at supermarkets or already earlier in the industry. Can we make that into a product that we actually could reuse, and the 3D printer then being the equipment to make it look beautiful again. Think about a carrot that is maybe not straight, but yeah, people don't want to buy it in the supermarket because it's not straight, and people know a carrot as being a straight carrot. So food waste, a lot of research, a lot of companies that approach us as application for food waste. Healthcare, both for elderly people with swallowing problems. So how can 3D food printing be a tool to create beautiful food for especially elderly people that live, for example, in elderly people's homes, that now get like mashed potatoes and some blended meat and blended vegetables, and they have to eat that three times a day. Well, we already know that food is super important. It's the basis of your body. So food and of course beverage, water. But it's super important, and we found out that only already in the Netherlands 8% of elderly people have swallowing problems, dysphagia, and they're eating bad because they don't like the experience on their plate. So as you want in a restaurant, you want to eat beautiful foods, why not for elderly people as well? And the third application that is being researched now a lot is personalized nutrition. So how can 3D food printing, together with online platforms and data that we have actually a lot about food, how together can that become a digital trend, let's say, to create personalized nutrition? So a meal that fits your body, your needs, your wishes. So main application experience, but quickly after that already healthcare and food waste.
Wow. So I guess, again, probably when you started the business, you had no clue that these were going to be the applications, or but you might have some clues, but then you found out by actually talking with customers that those were the main kind of pain points that your solution could have solved. Yes. And I'm glad that you also touched on the healthcare, we have at least, I think, top of my head, 4 to 5 companies who have also made it into the FoodTech 500, which play in the same sector. And I know that the vast majority of the proof of concept that they've created also with large corporates are actually in that space, meaning hospitals and healthcare, in the healthcare basically sector, where they actually enhance effectively the experience of the food by also creating personalized actually meals that can fit each diet of patients. So that is awesome, and I think in my view the kind of border between personalized nutrition and healthcare is kind of getting blurred, right? As a lot of applications actually in the healthcare system are being on the personalization of food. So I can see that a kind of like a natural evolution of that would be pure, personalization through 3D printing, which I think will make your space even bigger and even more interesting, I guess. Fantastic. Can you give us an overview of your business model? I mean, you mentioned earlier that you sell the appliance, directly to I guess, customers. But also I've been reading about renting, design consultancy. Can you just maybe elaborate more on the type of services also for the people who have joined us today and the ones who are going to rewatch the webinar, just to know, what can they expect from you?
Yes, that's a very good question indeed. I can imagine that sometimes a bit confusing, but main focus is to sell our 3D food printer, the Focus, that we currently have on the market. And together with that printer comes an online platform where we supply our customers with recipes for 3D food printing, with designs, but also have developed a design tool, which is an easy to use tool, so you don't need any technical background anymore to start using a 3D food printer. This online tool, you can easily upload an image, a text, or a logo, and just in 5 steps you will convert it into a 3D printable model. So that means that if you're a chef, you have an idea, you just Google a nice image, you turn it into 3D printed food in 5 minutes. So that's our main focus, selling the Focus printer together with our online software. But on the background, as I was mentioning, and this has become more and more important already since end of 2018, there's so much research being done, and actually all those institutes, either the universities, the research institute, but also the food multinationals, are really looking for a partner where they can collaborate with to learn more about this technology. And I dare to say that we're one of the leading companies in 3D food printing technology, but also together with our experience of food and the technology in combination. We also sell consultancy services where together with food multinationals, for example, we do feasibility studies and check out how this 3D food printing equipment on a larger scale, so more on industrial scale, can be a solution for their problems, for the things that they are looking for. So for example, what we found out in the last few years is that a lot of manufacturing lines, production lines are really not flexible. So it's really hard for a large company to change a product or to have a product innovation. And 3D food printing, of course, flexible tool. You can make almost any product. So why not make 3D food printing equipment on a larger scale where it allows those larger companies to bring new products and innovative products quicker to market. So next to selling the machine, including the online platform, which also teaches us a lot, we get a lot of data, we learn a lot from our customers, which also talk to us and want to collaborate with us. We use that experience and that knowledge actually in our consultancy, where we really focus on trying to bring 3D food printing to a more industrial scale.
Fantastic, because and I mean, kind of like a side question off the back of this would be, how do you envision, also all these different segments to evolve in the future? Meaning, I could see, especially in a large scale setting, that 3D printing, as companies kind of start experimenting with it, will kind of become a standalone, unit where they actually they use it to prototype most of their products. But how do you envision these different segments to kind of evolve in the future?
Yes, and this is actually our new challenge that we are facing, because I don't know if you've heard about it, but 3D food printing is being researched even like in space or in the military industry. So as you can imagine, being one of the few companies in the world that is developing this technology, you get like 1 trillion questions of all kinds of industries that are related to food. So for us, it's also a challenge to find out who can we help best, and what kind of companies can really help to make our mission and vision come true, which is of course finding that product market fit, but then for our company as well, and as founders as well. I mean, for us, purpose is also very important. So our biggest challenge now is to start to focus more. Funny enough, that's also the name of our printer. It was accidents actually, but really to find indeed the right companies that we want to collaborate with as well, and where we can make impact with this technology. So how do we see that? Yeah, it's complete different for every industry, but we really need to go to that personalized nutrition. We really see that as the biggest not trend, but biggest, let's say, important challenge to tackle. We all know that we live in a world where food is hard to get in a few years from now. We have overconsumption at the same time. Our grounds are drying, climate is changing, so there's a lot of problems to tackle. And in our opinion, 3D food printing technology is just a tool to help tackle a few of those problems. So think about, for example, what we've researched is, I don't know if you know about it, but you can freeze dry, for example, fruits and vegetables. And that way, okay, they don't look that appealing anymore. You don't get a raspberry as it is, you get a powder of raspberry, but it still contains all your nutrition, all the vitamins. It takes less transport, because if it turns into powder, you can have more powder in a container than you can have raspberries. You don't have to throw them away anymore in one of the chains, because you don't waste it. I mean, you can keep it for a longer time. But then the problem comes, what do you do with this powder? Are you going to mix it through your yogurt or in your water, or what are you going to do with that? So for us, all those ingredients coming together, can we do something with that food waste? Can we do something with personalized nutrition, where we still need to learn way more about what's the impact of food to our bodies? There is a lot of science already around it, but there is not really like one report stating this is the right way to go. There's a lot of people still struggling with that. So our biggest challenge for the next 5 years is to combine all that data together and all that knowledge of all those food companies together, and have the technology, our food printing technology, actually as the tool to make that data come to life and to make new products of that. So I'm not going to say that, for example, bakeries are going to have most advantage of food printing technology, or how that involves. In the end, it will have an impact on the whole food industry. It doesn't matter if it's from the farmer or as a consumer. We will all benefit from this technology, but it will take some time. Yeah.
Indeed, I guess, as it took you also a little bit of time to get to this point, you know.
Yes,
the next,
indeed.
the next few years, I guess, you know, as with anything, you know, as any new technology, I guess it takes time for human beings to really feel comfortable really with it. And I think when it comes to food in particular, you know, there is very emotional. So I can see that, you know, it takes some time for people to break into the idea of using it, you know, even as a business owner or as a restaurateur, you know. And I think, you know, the kind of almost conflict, you know, with craftsmanship versus, you know, technology is always there. And I think, you know, with food is particularly, I think, evident. But nonetheless, I'm a big fan of the fact that, you know, technology is an enabler eventually. And as you said, and as we've also witnessed ourselves, you know, there are a lot of applications that actually can be really good for humans, right? Where, for instance, in healthcare, you basically enhance, you know, the experience, but also you can personalize the food you're providing, which wouldn't be basically doable without such technology. So I think, yeah, it's a matter really of working on the psychology, if you will, side of it, and eventually, you know, it will be embraced by the whole industry. So one more question on actually on this side of the development of the company. As you know, some people may argue that 3D printers within the food industry could somehow jeopardize, you know, the craftsmanship element of the art of cooking, while basically automating a process that has forever been manual, such as the one of making food. How would you respond to that, and how do you see a way for 3D printed technology to be implemented into the craftsmanship of cooking? Yes. Maybe if you can deep dive into your experience also working with chefs, because that's probably the closest to what you've seen, you know, them in action.
Yes, and it indeed is a very important topic, and what we see is that actually what is really important is to teach the younger generation. So luckily one of our important target groups is also education, but it's really important to teach the new generation of chefs how to use technology in their kitchen, because either way being a 3D food printing equipment, or maybe equipment that measures your food waste, or having data systems in place or whatever, it is going to be a tool in your kitchen. So indeed, we always say it doesn't take away your craftsmanship. It shouldn't take away your craftsmanship. In the end, craftsmanship comes in developing a dish, for example, if you talk about a restaurant or a bakery or a pastry. It's about developing a dish and looking for ways to bring those ideas to life. And what people use today is a mold. Why not use a 3D food printer? A food printer doesn't do anything to the food. It just is actually really basic. And my brother tells me not to say this, but I always do it because it's the best example. And that is that a 3D food printer is actually just an automated piping bag. And people have used those for years and years. And now there's just a machine that can do that precise work for you. So it's actually a benefit because you don't have to do the work, you know, the repeatable work the whole time with your piping bag. The printer can do that for you. So it's enhancing your craftsmanship in a way that you can you have time again to work on new food or new recipes or on new dishes. Or you have really time to work on the taste of your product, for example, or the texture of your product. So it's just actually a tool to automate some of your processes. And what a lot of people don't know, and this is not only about craftsmanship, but this is also for consumers, because we get a lot of sometimes also negative feedback towards 3D food printing from people that we meet on the street or when we're showcasing it somewhere. And that is that what we should always keep in mind is that actually a lot of our food is already printed. If you eat a hamburger from the supermarket, it comes from a piping bag. It just has a machine that makes it flat. If you eat a cookie, it also comes from a 3D printer. The only thing that a 3D printer does is really make a 3D design, a 3D shape out of it. So you don't get a flat cookie anymore, but you get a cookie in the shape of Santa Claus or an Easter bunny. And that hurdle that we need to overcome, and maybe it's in the name, maybe it's because we named it wrong. We called it 3D food printing, and maybe we should have called it 3D shaping, for example. But to overcome that hurdle is going to be also a big challenge. It's not about craftsmanship, it's about teaching people where their food comes from. Of course, we still need to teach them that your carrot comes from the ground and chicken on the plate comes from the chicken that is running around in the grass fields. But to make food sustainable as well for the long term, we need to start thinking about using technology in our kitchens as well. Just like you use your oven or your blender, the 3D food printer can fit perfectly next to that.
Fantastic. Thanks, Nina, for sharing this. And maybe to bring everyone up to speed also with the applications in the kitchen, right? Can you touch base on the different ingredients that actually can be used for the printers and how they can actually be implemented via the machine? Meaning, if you could almost like, you know, help everyone to picture, you know, a 3D printer on their kitchen countertop, yeah, and maybe talk them through, you know, how you could actually use it to make food.
Yes. So at the moment, almost any food can be 3D printed as long as it is a paste kind of material. So what 3D food printing does is we use cartridges, similar to your, this is going to sound weird, but similar to your inkjet printer. We have syringes that come from the medical industry and a small needle, and our printer just extrudes the food through that syringe and through the needle while it's making its movement to create a 3D shape. So anything that is a paste kind of material, so think about different purees or gels or mousses or even meat, like minced meat, for example, or goat cheese, can all be printed and be turned in a 3D shape. But of course, with some kinds of foods, think about tomatoes, for example, which contains a lot of water. It's more difficult because that product needs to be stable as well. It needs to create a shape, and the shape should be standing straight, let's say. So in that way, sometimes you need to use some natural additives. So for example, what we learned from chefs as well is what they do in the kitchen if they want to make a celeriac puree. They add nuts to it to make it more stable, to make it more fatty, to make it more thick. and then it's perfectly printable. So with 3D food printing, you can use almost any natural ingredients. The 3D food printer also doesn't add anything to it. It just uses the food that comes in, it comes out. So if you put something tasty in, something tasty comes out, and the other way around. Anything is almost possible. A big hurdle to overcome is, for example, texture in food. So we know with certain ingredients, like for example, chocolate, if you melt chocolate and it hardens, then you have texture because it hardens naturally. Same with, for example, meringue or cookie dough, which you can afterwards put in the oven, or certain types of meat that you can afterwards fry in the pan or in the oven as well. But texture within 3D food printing currently is a big challenge. At the moment, we cannot, for example, create texture of a tomato if you print tomato puree. Although there is a lot of experiments going on also in other 3D food printing companies like Nova Meat, for example, who's inventing recipes to create steaks, but then not from meat, but from plant-based ingredients, and they really managed to bring back texture. And we have those same experiences here in the byFlow offices, where we know we can tweak the food in a certain way without adding unnatural stuff, but in a certain way that the 3D printer can create the texture inside of the food. So we're doing a lot of experiments there as well to learn how we can bring back that texture. Because in the end, that's important. When you eat hamburger, you want to feel the bread and the meat and maybe the salad that's on it, or the onion that's on it. So that's for food printing the same, of course. Yeah.
Fantastic. And I'm glad that also you mentioned some other companies that are operating in your space, because I'm sure you're collaborating with them, knowing what they're focusing on. And I know that it's a real challenge, to tackle all three elements: texture, taste, and appearance all at once. So you have to tackle them, I guess one by one, but eventually when you bring all those results together, and as you also mentioned earlier about data, probably that also plays a major role, because effectively you're experimenting and learning each time you run an experiment on how to make that process a tiny bit better. So eventually it's just a matter of time, I guess, where we will have machines that will actually print a whole steak, which has the same texture, taste, and maybe appearance to the real one. So I think is going to happen. It's just a matter of time and research, as you mentioned earlier, that will play a major role in understanding also which direction I think probably is best to take. I'm going to ask you one more question, also being mindful of time, before opening up to the Q&A. We received quite a lot of questions, so I'll skip the whole COVID situation. I think we're now almost back to a new normal, whatever that looks in different probably regions of the world. But I'm actually really interested in hearing more about what the future actually holds for byFlow. Can you share any innovation projects you're currently working on, and maybe, in regards also to partnering with large manufacturers and multinationals to further basically, advance the research without, of course, disclosing, anything that is too confidential?
Yes. Unfortunately, that indeed always is a bit a challenge. No, indeed, I was already mentioning a few things, a few ingredients that we are working on, literally, and also, first of all, we really believe that personalized nutrition is going to be the future, and that 3D food printing equipment is going to help with that. With all the ingredients I was mentioning, not the equipment itself alone, but also the data that we also gather from the food companies, because they have way more experience in that than we do. We are experts in developing technology, but we're not the experts already in the fields for hundreds of years that know everything about food. So first of all, we are really trying to tackle how can we scale up our technology in a way that personalized meals in the future can also become more known, so that if you go to a supermarket, if you go to a restaurant or whatever, if you need to eat at the train station, there's a machine creating that perfect dish for you that fits your needs and your nutritions and stuff like that for your body. So first of all, for the future of byFlow, we are really researching ways, one, how to scale up the technology. But on the other hand, then if we're talking about personalized nutrition in combination with 3D food printing, then what hurdles do we still need to overtake? Also in terms of regulation and stuff like that, because how do you, for example, gather the data of someone and make sure that privacy, of course, is very important, that that data doesn't leak. And yeah, that all needs to be worked out. So industrialization, collaborating with food multinationals, and that indeed to tackle personalized nutrition. And yeah, on the other hand, we're really building out our platform with recipes and designs, but also in combination with data of what we've learned in the past 5 years already, and hopefully will learn way more. Where we also believe that not only the technology, let's say the hardware itself, but also the software, the online platform is going to play a really important role for the future. So yeah, working with large food multinationals, luckily they also give us the opportunity to collaborate with them. They also need flexible, smaller companies to make innovation go quicker. And on the other hand, we need the food industry to gather the data from the food itself. And that's the perfect combination. And we're really happy to execute that for the coming years.
Fantastic, Nina. Sounds as though you're working on a real exciting plan. So we're really looking forward to see the developments of your company. And out of interest, the very last question: when do you envision that a B2C actually model, where end consumers will actually buy a 3D printer from the supermarket or whatever to make their food at home, will actually become a reality? How far do you think we are from it?
It's a good question. At the moment, we see that industrial 3D food printing, where, for example, you have use cases on the go. So one of the trends, of course, is that way more people eat on the go. For example, if they go home from work or they eat at work or stuff like that. We, as byFlow, see a better use case for semi-industrial or industrial 3D food printing, also because of the knowledge, than we really see having a printer at home. If you look at New York, for example, and in myself also, I live in Amsterdam, there's already a lot of homes being built without a kitchen. So why would you then have a 3D food printer there, where it's easier to go out for dinner and have someone else decide what's good for you? So home, we don't really see as a use case for the future. There's other companies in the food printing space that are investigating that. But if you're talking about industrial 3D food printing and potentially also towards personalized nutrition, yeah, it really depends on how fast the industry can come along with us. I mean, the technology can be developed. That's not the biggest challenge. The biggest challenge is the science in combination with conservative food multinationals that have to tackle the hurdles of really wanting to pioneer and be leaders in the food industry. But that's maybe 5 to 10 years, we can see the first results of having a personalized meal on your plate. That would be really cool, right?
Yeah, it would be indeed. It sounds like it's a very symbiotic, relationship between the developers of the technology and the industry. But as you said, as food personalization, develops and tech becomes the enabler of that effectively, I can see that it can actually develop quite fast. Also, given the progress that you guys have made in the last 5 years or so. So it's I think it's going to be a bright actually future.
It's like baking a cake. I always mention it. If you want to bake a cake and you forget the eggs, you don't get a cake. So all the ingredients need to come together, and then innovation can go super fast.
Really, really wise words. Thanks, Nina, for sharing those. I'm going to take a few questions from the audience. Diana is asking, hygiene is vital in food. How do you keep your components clean? And do chefs also need to know how to code to actually operate your machinery?
Yes, very good question. Hygiene is indeed very important, so we have tackled that problem. So what we do is actually the only thing that comes in contact with food is the cartridges we have, so let's say the medical syringes, and the nozzle. And both of them can be put into the dishwasher. So that's a really easy way to keep it clean. Do you need to learn code to know how to operate a machine? At first, yes. Then you needed to know how to make a 3D model. And therefore, that's why we developed byFlow Studio, our online platform, where you can just upload any image, text, logo, whatever, and it will transform that idea into a 3D model. There's even a paint function in there, so you can go all out and completely creative. So at the moment, luckily with byFlow Studio, you don't need to know how to code in order to operate a 3D food printer and the designs, whatever comes with it.
That's fantastic. Again, it's probably showing you, or you've witnessed, the progress you've made from
Yes.
needing someone who needed to code it to actually create something out of it, to building a software that actually now allows everyone to be able to print food out. Fantastic. Thanks, Nina, for this. Question from Johnny. Naturally, the users are driven by demand and target personas. Is there a use case yet where the inputs going into the printer are from healthy ingredients, or is this currently a future objective?
I don't know if Johnny's still here and if he means healthy ingredients in terms of already that personalized nutrition ingredients. But as I was mentioning before, almost any ingredient is printable. So also in our database, we have a lot of ingredients that are only out of vegetables, for example. So if you consider vegetables a healthy ingredient, that is what goes in exactly. And I was mentioning earlier already that, for example, you can freeze dry your fruits or vegetables. You can grind nuts, for example, turn that into powders. You can mix that with a potato puree or a fruit gel or whatever. So we're also indeed already looking for, can you put vitamins or nutrition inside of that food so that when you print it, instead of taking a vitamin pill, you can have it already in your food. So you don't need to take any separate supplements, for example. So that future is not that far away. That's actually already possible.
Fantastic. Thanks, Nina. Yeah, I believe that with Johnny's here, but I believe with healthy ingredients, he actually meant fruits and vegetables. So attached to personalized nutrition. Johnny, please, if you want to add on that.
Yeah, I was going to say thanks very much for the answer. I did ask that question before you went into all the examples of the healthy foods that you can use in the printer. And yes, I would definitely class fruit and vegetables as healthy ingredients. But yeah, thanks very much for your answer. It's really, really insightful. Thanks.
I'm going to take two more, Nina, being mindful of time. So Nicole is asking how much this is about scaling up production of personalized food. And can you actually scale up chef's recipes production?
Yes, that's a question we get a lot. And we always ask the question back, if you talk about scaling up, how much are we talking about? Are we talking about hundreds or thousands of dishes? For example, for a chef, that really depends on the size of his restaurant. With one printer currently, you can make around 75 small dishes a day. So what we did last year when there was a 3D food printing conference hosted actually here in the Netherlands in Venlo, we showed that you can also have a print farm. It's already known in the plastic industries, but now for food as well, we really optimize the workflow in such a way that you can make with just a few 3D food printers up to hundreds of dishes a day, even personalized ones. So even in a way that you would say, okay, now customer A wants to have a logo of its company 10 times printed, and then customer B wants to have just a beautiful decoration on a cake. You can make with just a few printers almost hundreds of dishes a day. So that's the fastest for now to scale up. Because one of the things is we always get the question to scale up our technology. And as I was mentioning earlier, we really want to do that as well. We're already doing that, we're researching that. But we always ask the question back, if we're talking about scaling up, are we talking about hundreds of thousands an hour? And this really depends on the industry how to scale up and how fast. So scaling possibilities, yes, are there while introducing the 3D footprint farm. So catering companies, for example, that have to make 100 dishes a day already use that. And hopefully in the near future, we can really make machines to scale up production in such a way that you can make maybe hundreds of meals an hour.
Yeah. Okay, wow. How far are we from that now? Meaning, what's the maximum capacity in terms of number of dishes? Let's take a fairly fairly normal, let's say, dish, right? Not too complex with hundreds of ingredients.
Yes. Well, I would then take maybe the example for a pastry shop that makes maybe 100 or 200 or maybe 500 cakes a day, and he wants to have a special decoration. With one printer, you can go up to 75 pieces a day. But if you're talking about really scaling up, for example, with one person, you can use 5 printers at the same time. Then you can make maybe 500 dishes a day. So that really increases fast.
Fantastic. Thanks, Nina, for also sharing all this technical
Details.
One more question from Juiced, and I'm going to actually condense 2 questions that he asked. What is the approximate time for printing an amuse size bite? Which I'm guessing is, we can call it snack.
1 or 2 minutes. Goes super fast.
Okay, 1 to 2 minutes. Fantastic. And can you have multiple printer cartridges attached to one printer to get a layered taste?
At the moment, no. Unfortunately, we only provide one print head, so with one cartridge. There is a solution. So, for example, you could, within one cartridge, already put in different ingredients, so you have that layered effect. The other way is that if you have, for example, 2 or 3 printers, you just print first the first layers in potato puree, then you bring the plate to the next printer, the next printer, next printer, so you get those layers mixed. Largest challenge we have here is texture. For example, with potato puree, you don't need that much pressure because it's quite soft. But if you would like to print marzipan, for example, or certain types of meat, the printer needs more pressure to extrude the food and it still make it look good. And at this moment, the printers are not smart enough yet to recognize what food is implemented inside of the printer and then apply the pressure needed to make your beautiful dish. So when we tackle the challenge of texture, we probably also have more knowledge on the food side. And then you have ideas coming in from artificial intelligence and stuff like that. And when we can really make printers smart, so let's say recognize what kind of food is in there, then this hurdle can be tackled as well.
Fantastic, Nina. It sounds like also data is still going to play a major role in, in understanding. And it's funny that you also mentioned this because it's a topic that always comes up. You know, there's like data is a new currency, and especially I guess in the food industry is something that is fairly new, or better yet, it's you know, most companies haven't been using data that much as pointers of you know, where to take the company or the research, you know, towards. So it's fascinating to hear also from you that, you know, even in something that has to do with 3D printing, you know, something that again we've been using for ages, like food, data still plays a major role. And it's I think is a really kind of like a cultural, almost a generational actually clash, right? Where it's probably instinctively, you know, natural for you to look at data and constantly, you know, gather that, versus maybe, you know, other ways of producing food that now the data element is not as, you know, as important effectively in the decision-making process. Fantastic. Again, thanks a lot, Nina. It's 7 sharp o'clock. So thank you so much for joining us today for this fantastic interview and sharing your story really openly with us and our audience. Thanks for everyone who is tuned in. So without further ado, let me wish you and your whole team the best over the coming months. Hopefully also, you know, coming out of this global pandemic stronger than ever.
We'll survive.
And also, thank you again for your time. I know you're really busy, and we really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us.
Thank you guys too. And if there are still open questions, please feel free to send me a message over LinkedIn or send me an email. I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Nina, again. You have a great evening.
Thank you too.
Cheers.
Bye bye.
Ciao.